We find that the governor on many occasions engaged in sex-based harassing conduct and conversations. The most serious was the governor's unwelcome physical contact with women, including touching intimate body parts.
So what?
One current employee, who we identify as Executive Assistant Number 1, endured repeated physical violations.
I do it with everyone. Black and white, young and old, straight and LGBTQ, powerful people, friends, strangers, people who I meet on the street. So what? And that is what I do every day.
At White House Senior Living, our residents feel right at home. Our vibrant facility offers delightful activities and outings, round-the-clock professional care, and exquisite house-made meals.
Well, I've been eating everything that's put in front of me. I've been eating all Italian foods, basically.
And ice cream.
And ice cream, chocolate chip ice cream.
White House Senior Living, where residents feel like presidents.
Hello, let me just say I don't like either of you.
Well, that's understandable.
It's a trap.
It actually is a trap.
It's a trap.
That was kind of clumsy, but hey, how's everybody doing? It is Friday night, and we are here. I'm patiently waiting for Dr. Glover to appear. I sent her the link, and she's not appeared yet. But anyway, it's Friday, and it's the Friday before my 52nd birthday. So happy birthday to me. But anyway, lots of stuff to talk about. You know, we're going to talk about Dr. Glover's paper. That's the most important thing. But after that, when we go to Rumble, we're going to be talking about this new FISA thing that happened today here in the States, and all sorts of other shenanigans that are going on in the world. But let me go ahead and get Kevin in here. Let's play the Kevin intro. I forgot to actually hit the button. There he is.
I'm just here to smell the food.
What food? There's food?
I don't know. I was promised food.
I miss food.
Damn.
So what's going on, Kev? Let me. Michelle Elliott was first, by the way.
Michelle, it's raining. It's been raining for like 9 months.
Yeah, Mallory was here, and Steve is here, and Jason's here, and Homicidal's here, and Addie's here, Toasty's here, Michael's here. There's people here. Jeffrey Zamora is here. Jeffrey.
See? Fellow chuckleheads.
I've got like
a
thing in my ear. Mob Tech is here as well.
You're going to be 52?
I will be turning 52 at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
Hey, I have a question. Why are you not following Sonia on Twitter?
I don't. Am I not?
No, you're not.
I gotta fix these things. One of them's.
She's having ice cream either way. So, 52, right?
Yeah.
And you still don't know any better, do you?
No.
Okay. So Sonia, I called him out, and he's not very smart though.
I don't know, man. I don't know. Yeah, we're just waiting. Up.
Straighten up, fly right.
I just got a bing in my ear. I just got a bing in my ear. It went bing. But anyway, so Kevin, a little background here. You know, several years ago when we had this show and we were way less professional than we are now, we reached out to a very intelligent, highly respected young lady who is a very smart person when it comes to tobacco control and harm reduction. And she actually agreed to come talk to us for some reason. I have no idea why she did that, but she said initially, you know, I won't be able to spend a whole lot of time.
That's
and then
right.
she ended up spending like 4 hours with us.
No.
She has the patience of Job. Like she's like
Of a nun.
monumental task, you know, hanging out with us for that long. And then over the years, she has made herself available to educate our idiots. That's Kevin and I, not you people that are watching. I promise I didn't call you idiots. And now I reached out to her the other day, and she said yes, and I have a paper.
That's right.
And I said, oh. So she said, I'm going to send it to you and Kevin. And then patiently, Kevin and I both sat waiting for the email to come. And then eventually we did get it. So we got her on as soon as possible. So anyway, without further ado, I shouldn't say adieu. She looks like she's wiping her glasses. Or I don't want to bring her in if she's not ready. Oh, she's got her coffee. She showed me her coffee cup. And yes, apparently I'm not following. Let me go over to X real quick.
That's right. Get your ass over there.
I
You
don't
got no time for no bullshit.
Don't say foul language in front of Dr. Glover, Kevin.
She's technically not here yet.
She's still watching. She's in the back room. Try to be more professional, or she won't ever come on again, Kevin.
Fine.
You know, as a man of your age, you should know. You should know not to be talking like that. By the way,
yeah.
You know, it's
yeah. I haven't called her a cranky old broad.
No, sir.
Well, I would never.
No, sir.
Sonia's driving, so she'll be real happy when you get her. She gets your follow thing. Yeah.
I don't think she will be. She'll be like, he never says anything worth saying anyway. But anyway, I think she's ready. I'm waiting. She hasn't given me up. She's nodding her head. All right. So anyway,
have like presidential music or something playing.
I wish I had some sort of really cool pomp and circumstance for her. But anyway, we welcome our friend Dr. Marewa Glover to the show.
Yay!
Hi.
Hello, ¿cómo estás?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
And
can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Oh, you sound normal to me. I have one ear. I have one ear that's giving me trouble, but it's not your fault. It's the headphones' fault. So Dr. Glover, it's been a while. How have you been?
Really, really busy, and sorry I kept you on edge there. I was like rushing. I was like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get there because of course it's 2:00 in the afternoon in New Zealand on Saturday, and there's no staff at the office, and I've got to run around and get my banner myself. Oh dear, how terrible! No. So and it's been raining, and the power was off at home. So you know how it goes. It's like, I got to get there.
We would have waited for you.
And I'm
Victoria,
like, I'm not going to have time to get coffee, but I did. I just snuck that coffee in there.
We would have kept on talking until you got your coffee for sure.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So there's a lot of weirdo stuff going on in not just New Zealand. The UK's got some weirdo stuff going on with some proposed legislation, and obviously New Zealand, who has been relatively sane, appears to maybe not be following that same trend now. And you've written a paper. You sent me the 5-minute video, but I didn't want to play the whole video for the people because I just figured I would ask you about it.
Okay.
So, you wrote a paper.
Yeah. I was just sort of thinking on the way, here into your green room, how long we've been meeting on this forum of yours. And I'm not sure how many years it's been, but my gosh, we're still all here. We're still all, fighting the same misinformation and terrible things that are said about people who smoke, people who vape, people who have, who are advocating for harm reduction. It's like, do you guys know how long since we first had a show together?
I'm actually pulling up the show reel because you're one of the first really awesome interviews that we did. Way back when, and I'm
my
scrolling
favorite
down.
show ever. 2018.
So
I say 2018.
Well, right now the most recent show, we've passed that one. Way down here. Let's see. I think we're looking at 6 years ago.
Wow. Well, congratulations to all of us and to everybody who joins your show. And I know it's hard. It's hard to just keep repeating yourself over and over and banging your head against a brick wall. But I think when I went to the Global Forum on Nicotine in 2015, I remember drawing a little slide, like head desk,
Mm-hmm.
and here we still are. However, some countries have moved on, and that's great to see. Others have moved backwards. As you indicated in your blurb, we might talk a little bit about Australia. But I've been really busy, obviously, for the last 6 years. And in the beginning, before you get a research study up and running, you have a little bit of time to sort of get about and talk. But now I have run so many studies over the last 6 years, and I have a backlog of results to write up and papers to write up. So I've been a little bit, off air and quiet, I think. I try to stay watching what's happening on X, formerly Twitter, and keep up with what is happening. But so I'm so glad that this latest paper of ours has come out. It would have been good if it had come out a lot earlier, when New Zealand was actually going through the process of considering introducing these what's called Endgame policies. And I think we may have even talked about this before, and I'm sure many of our mates who are watching around the world know about them. But just to recap, in case everyone doesn't know, what was proposed in New Zealand was to take the nicotine in combustible cigarettes down to zero. Well, in the proposal stage, they weren't saying what level, but when the law went through, it was 0.8 milligrams per gram. So this is way below what is detectable, what had been detectable in research trials with people in a laboratory. Do you feel the nicotine yet? No.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I don't ever feel it at that level, right? So that was one of them, was what I call denicotinization of cigarettes. The other policy was what everyone calls the age ban. And that was raising the age of when you could buy cigarettes, when they could be sold to you. So the permitted age for selling tobacco products would go up, combustible products it was, 1 year every year. So that was going to kick in like 2027. At the moment in New Zealand, unlike in the States, sales of tobacco, alcohol, etc., is set at 18, not 21. And so that was another one, and that got passed. And that was kind of a eventual prohibition. Nobody of any age would ever be able to buy cigarettes, because it would just keep going up and up and up. And the other one was reducing the number of retail stores that can sell tobacco from about 6,000 corner stores, supermarkets, petrol stations, etc., down to 599 across the whole country. And everyone thinks of New Zealand as a small country. And we're definitely, actually, I don't know how big New Zealand is compared to Texas. Everyone thinks of Texas as a big state, and the US is a huge country. But when I do presentations at conferences, I like to show the size of New Zealand geographically superimposed on Europe. And actually New Zealand goes from like down the bottom of the boot of Italy all the way up to the top. So geographically, New Zealand is similar in size to Japan. So landmass-wise, we are not that small, but we do only have like 5.2 million people, and a lot of those are children. So we do have a small population for the size. Pretty cold down here, though, guys. We are near the South Pole. So those three policies, there were others that were proposed during the run-up to the legislation passing. They discussed banning filters in cigarettes. And they discussed setting a minimum price, and that minimum price, just setting a minimum price for tobacco products. So those were the 5 policies. And shall I keep going, or you want to ask about those policies at all?
Well, I mean, the raising of the age 1 year every year was something that was tried several years ago in Hawaii. The state of Hawaii had considered a similar bill for the state on the state level, and it didn't pass because the idea that you would have somebody, years down the road who was in their 80s going in to buy a pack of cigarettes, and some 65-year-old would be out there going, "Hey, mate, are you buying cigarettes? Can you buy me a pack too?" Because, I mean, that's how we bought cigarettes when we were teenagers. We would see an older, person who, an older teenager or a 20, 21 or 22-year-old guy or whatever, hand him a $10 bill and say, "Buy me a pack of cigarettes." So I just, that whole idea that you're keeping adults, people that can make all their choices in the world, from making any choice seems ridiculous to me, let alone to buy a pack of cigarettes. Not that I would ever promote them, but just the idea that people can't make choices for themselves. Obviously for us, that sort of causes the hair on the back of our necks to kind of stand up. You're not allowed to, make decisions for yourself, even as an adult. It just kind of just drives us crazy. So it didn't pass. It didn't pass in Hawaii when it was proposed. But then again, we've seen that same language, that same type of idea being introduced in the UK, now in New Zealand. The nannies are going crazy.
Yeah. So it did pass in, I think there was a place in the Philippines, which I talk about in the paper, and they did pass it, but then it got repealed. It was challenged and got repealed, so it never was actually enacted. So with a little bit of a background in policy analysis, one of the things that concerned me was that this policy was completely novel, untried, and untested in a real world setting. And similarly, so is denicotinization. Now, people will say, oh no, we've had the low nicotine cigarettes. They've been around for years. They've always failed at market. Yes, they always fail at market. People might try them once, but when you find out there's like nothing in there, it's not satisfying. They go back to ordinary, nicotine containing cigarettes with a sufficient amount. So what ex-colleagues and co-investigators on the studies that, will be over 10 years ago now, when we sort of realized this, because we did a small trial of the 22nd century using the 22nd century very, very low nicotine cigarettes in New Zealand. There were a couple of trials here. Definitely what it showed us was if people have access on the market to usual strength cigarettes, and in our trials, of course, we were giving people these very, very low nicotine cigarettes for free to see if, they could use them to quit, or it could help them cut down. And, what you find in those types of studies is that people still smoke their own. So they might smoke a few of the very low nicotine cigarettes, but they were still smoking their own. And so if you wanted to import or, have these very low cigarettes for sale in a country, and I'm not against them, have them there as an option for people by all means. But what they wanted in New Zealand, these ex-colleagues in tobacco control, they wanted mandatory removal of usual strength cigarettes and only have these very, very low nicotine cigarettes available. They then tried to convince everybody that this was a good idea. Let's not talk about the fact that it's basically prohibition. You're basically taking the product that people are currently using off the market and offering them a dud that's not going to have any of the pharmacokinetic and psychological.
There's not enough
effects.
positive reinforcement to satiate the patient. Or
you'd have the hand to mouth motion, etc. But so I never liked that idea. I don't agree with kind of totalitarian control of the population and telling them what they should and shouldn't do. I come from the time of, World Health Organization, Ottawa Charter, provide people with the tools and the education and the information, for them to make their own choices. People know themselves best, provide choices in front of them and support. So when tobacco control started going, very prohibition focused, very sort of totalitarian, authoritarian, and getting very frustrated with people who wouldn't do what they're told, whether it's like drink less alcohol or stop smoking, or you're not dieting enough, So it's changed a lot. Denicotinization, that was one. Basically only leaving 599 stores sparsely spread out across the country. And, my concern has always been on how young Māori women living, away from shops, for example, how will they be affected by this? What sort of measures will people go through to get a cigarette? And I don't believe that those measures that they should be left to go to take risky behavior to obtain a cigarette. You know, even young girls approaching men in our local town centre where my office is, you know, asking for money so they can buy a vape or a cigarette. You know, those are the sort of
we know when government reduces access to something that people enjoy, and they say, oh, well, you can't have that anymore, or you have to jump through these hoops to be able to get the thing that you enjoy. The wonderful black market will provide what you want.
That's right.
I mean, Australia has seen that. I mean, heck, New York City, the illicit combustible cigarette market is a multi-billion-dollar illicit market in New York City alone. So when taxes go up, when they reduce access to it, whatever they do to limit people's choices or limit people's ability to get that thing, they're just going to buy it off the back of a truck somewhere.
Yeah. And we saw that in New Zealand with the robberies. I think I talked with you about the robberies and the ram raids of all the stores that was happening. So there was the stores and the age ban and the denicotinization, the banning filters in it. So I talked with you before about our Voices of the 5% study. So we recruited about 61 people and diverse, aging from 19 to like 82, I think, from across the country. And we've interviewed them over the last 4 years. We're putting their case stories up on the website, voicesofthe5%.nz. And so we have kind of a panel of people who smoke. They were people who, at the beginning of the study, didn't want to quit or had not in any near term. Thank you for putting that up. So no near term intention to quit or didn't want to quit. They were quite happy with smoking, and some of them believe they wouldn't be able to stop smoking by 2025. So we've been interviewing them using qualitative methods. So we ring up and have sort of a loose schedule of topics, and then we'll have a discussion with them, record that, and put their stories up there. So when these proposals, when it started becoming like, I think that the previous government, so we had a left-leaning led government. I think you have similar kind of like left and right, or know. So we had. It looked like that government was starting to listen to the prohibitionist leaning academics that have been pushing this idea of denicotinization and age ban for some time, for a long time, I guess, but no previous governments that we had or the Ministry of Health, were entertaining it as a serious option. So the previous government did look like it was starting to consider these policies seriously, and we thought, well, why don't we ask our participants what they think of these policies? And obviously with qualitative research, you have to be very careful not to lead them in their thoughts, but we would start with, have you heard about any new smoke-free policies? So, long story short, we had quite a bit of data on what the participants had heard about these policies, thought about these policies. Some of them had not heard about these policies because, of course, in the last 4 years, we also had the pandemic, COVID pandemic.
You said the word.
Which one?
You can't say the C word.
Yes, she can. Oh. She's a professional. Leave her alone.
We had a show removed one time because we said the C word.
Oh no!
It wasn't even a negative context.
Oh, they're over it now. They
YouTube took it down.
Am I allowed to say the L word? Like, so we had lockdown. I said it there. So there's other stuff going on, but a lot of people don't watch TV and media, and don't watch mainstream media, or listen to radio anymore, and that's quite a lot of our participants. So some of them had not heard. So we wondered, like, how, and some other surveys came out in New Zealand saying, everyone agrees with it. Let's do it. Everyone agrees with it. I'm thinking, how can people agree with something that they've never experienced? They've never seen anyone else experience it. It's probably a concept they haven't even thought of. Mm-hmm. And nobody in the world has ever done this. There's no real life community or setting, state, that has done any of these three policies. So we don't actually know what's going to happen. We don't know if it will work or not work.
No track record.
Yeah. All of the research that was being pushed as evidence that we should do this, so this is what's going to eliminate smoking and get us to smoke-free 2025, which we're nearly at, by the way. We're at 6.8% daily smoking in New Zealand. Right, we're nearly there.
Close,
so
close.
Very close.
And to be clear, to explain to the viewers and the listeners and everybody out there in the sphere, nicotine free does not mean nicotine or smoke free does not actually mean smoke free. There's a 5% expectation. So when they say smoke free, anything below 5% is what they want, is their goal, or at least that's what they say. I mean, obviously, after they get to that 5%, they're going to say there's an epidemic and we still have to fight this.
they might, yeah. I mean, it's only probably in the last 6 or so years that we've started seeing across the board sort of zero, policies that are zero road deaths, zero this, zero that. And previous to that period of time, we were more pragmatic about what can be achieved with policies, and trying to get to zero wasn't seen as pragmatic. It's kind of, even our 5% or below smoking prevalence in New Zealand was considered aspirational. And it was an aspirational goal. The fact that we're down to 6.8%, even I'm blown away. I wasn't sure how low can you go,
Back in old timey days when you were a part of tobacco control, what was the smoking rate then in New Zealand?
30, it's now 31 years ago.
You're not old enough to have been in tobacco control 31
years ago. I
ago.
started young, right? We'll just go with that. So 31 years ago, smoking among Māori, the indigenous people in New Zealand, was 50%, 30 years ago. And for the whole country, it would have been around about, on average, 27. But I always like to you've got to look at subgroups, because it's usually concentrated, among lower socioeconomic, for example, people with mental health conditions. So averages don't give you a true kind of picture of what's going on. You can have parts of a country that pretty much they're like 3% smoking prevalence. And you go somewhere else and it's like 40% smoking prevalence, or internationally in some countries, you might hear that the smoking prevalence is 28% in, say, I don't know, Russia or something. Russia's not a good example. Somewhere in, I don't know, Nigeria. Let's say Nigeria. But then when you look at China's a good one, because only 4% of women in China smoke. So looking at the average smoking prevalence for the population in China is stupid. It's mainly men that smoke.
The overall in China, the overall is 26.6% according to this that I'm just reading from the Chinese Center for Disease Control, but it's 50.5% for men.
That's right. Yeah.
And 2.1% for women.
Yeah. So we had 50% smoking among Māori. That was 2 to 3 times higher than the non-Māori European population. And our Pacific Island population were they've always sort of been in between, halfway between Māori and the non-Māori European population. So we've always had quite a large inequity in smoking prevalence, but there are historical reasons, etc. So, smoke-free Sweden, smoke-free New Zealand is 5% smoking prevalence or below. That's the definition. And so we asked our participants, and trying to sort of keep it very vague, have you heard about any new policies? And eventually we would have to say, if nicotine in cigarettes was taken down to a very, very low level, what would you think of that? So the model that, so that's my paper you're showing there. And really I wanted to, it's like I said, and I've said in the small videos that have been presented at Global Forum on Nicotine, they're online as well. Mm-hmm. It's like going around and asking people in New Zealand, what do you think? How do you think you will like it living on Mars? Well, how come someone answer that? Well, I have nothing, go out on the street or in the general public. How do you think you'll like living on Mars? Well, some people wouldn't know anything about Mars, just that it's another planet. They don't know anything about, well, how do you breathe? How do you wash? How do you go to the toilet? Yep. And so let's do a survey of them, and they have to choose between, I'd really like it, I would hate it. It's a nonsense. So surveys were being done of New Zealand, the New Zealand population, and the results were coming out that 78% of people who smoke support these policies. I'm thinking, how did they explain what the policy would mean, or what did it mean? What's the level of nicotine in the cigarette going to be? Did people realize that will mean there will be no hit? There will be no, you won't get the,
In this situation, did they even poll people that smoked?
Yes.
About these policies, or were they just asking the general population that already hate smokers?
Exactly. That as well, So, you can go out on the streets of New Zealand and ask, should the government just take cigarettes off the market? Well, we're down to 6.8% smoke daily. So do the maths. It's over 90% are going to say, yeah, hate it, get rid of it.
Well, with all of the media that's been going on or about kids smoking or kids vaping in the bathroom, and if you're catching any of the flack from Australia, because they've been going full bore on this whole narrative that there's this huge epidemic of kids that are going to die because they're vaping in the bathroom at school or smoking in the bathroom at school. Now suddenly it's the evil that's going to take your children. And I see this whole moral panic, this whole campaign of moral panic being used to weaponize a parent's love for their child, their concern for their child, because all of a sudden they're being berated left and right by Simon Chapman and, his ilk. All of the, the crazies from Australia are on the news I'm seeing those stories repeated over here now.
Yeah, and we have the same tactics being used in New Zealand. That's never stopped either. So you have, yeah, of course, researchers, we have to take that into account, and we call it, it's a bias. We call it social desirability bias, or yeah, that's one word for it, conformity bias, and that becomes a limitation. Would people, are they answering in a certain way because they want to please the interviewer, and I do recognize it in the paper and talk about how New Zealand has had, we've got a long history of anti-smoking campaigning and, mass media campaigns encouraging people to hate smoking. And that unfortunately bled into people hating people who smoke and the stigma and discrimination. And many of our campaigns, some of them were just quite shocking, with the stigmatizing and making sort of people who smoke look like idiots. And of course, Simon Chapman and Melanie Wakefield in Australia were behind a lot of that type of campaign messaging. And because New Zealand was poorer, they would say, "Oh, you can use it for free." So, we got the same campaign material and maybe a little bit of a voiceover to get rid of the "G'day, mate," and put it with a Kia ora type, accent. So, but I mean, it was not nice. It was like, loser, you're a loser if you smoke, and really stigmatizing, trying to get the public to believe that anybody who smoked was, they're like missing something. They're not very smart. They'll never get a job or a girlfriend.
Bloomberg's narrative that he's used repeatedly in the media is that if you use nicotine, that it drops your IQ 5 or 10 points.
Yeah. So
yeah, he pays people all over the world to repeat his nonsense.
There's been a lot of that. I mean, we've had 30 years of it. So we have to consider, in doing research and asking people about smoking, that this is going to have an impact. So it's just sort of considered a limitation. We've got to keep that in mind, that some opinions that are expressed might be a little bit biased by that kind of but actually many of our participants, we built a relationship with them over the 4 years. We always say, look, there's no right and wrong answers. No, they'll say, so they might start saying something, say, oh, sorry, I probably shouldn't. We say, no, go ahead. This is, we want to know what they really think. And so with regards to particularly these policies that had never been tried in real life, there was the only research studies of what might happen are mainly lab-based. So people go along to a clinic, research lab or building, and they try these very low nicotine cigarettes in a controlled setting of the study, not in real life. And then the real life trials, as I said, everyone has still always had access to their own cigarettes. And I think there's a paper just come out, or maybe coming out, where they've looked at methodology around those trials, and the amount at which people resort to their own cigarettes while they're doing these trials it has been underrepresented.
Well, when 22nd Century got their FDA marketing authorization and their reduced exposure paper or approval or whatever, we questioned them on social media, specifically about product substitution. And they said, our research shows that does not happen. And obviously in social media, if you say anything negative about VLNs, you're going to immediately be berated on the internet by random people. And then when you go to look at their X account, you're going to see that the only thing that they post about are these cigarettes, and then you find out that they are actual investors or people pushing this, market people that are marketing these products. But yeah, anytime you challenge them, they just disappear. And obviously, a while ago, I was showing the 4-year history of the 22nd century stock, and it went from $1,500 a share to now it's $1 plus, just over $1.
It went from they split their stock, so it was like 60 cents. Then it went to like $2. Then it went up, and now it's back where it is at the moment. So they wouldn't lose their standing with the stock exchange.
The 4-year or the 3-year, 3 years on in June of April 18th of 2021, they were somewhere around $1,200 a share.
Yes, that's another kind of show, I think. But at the, when the law passed, and so the government entered into an agreement with 22nd Century. Basically, they were given a monopoly agreement to supply the product to New Zealand. So that that just raises a whole nother kind of realm of discussion in terms of the Fair Trading Act. And anyway, so I should just say, and I don't know if you know, we had a change of government, and the Labour left Labour socialist government got
Jacinda.
Absolutely. It's almost like it feels like we've had a revolution here, and people have woken up and fought back, and gone, we've had enough. And so it was just like they were just swept out. And so the new government, and it was quite surprising in that, we have it's called National, and they are the kind of centre right sort of. And then we had New Zealand First, which were more to the right, and then we have the ACT Party, which are out there as well, more to the right.
So you have in New Zealand, you have more than 2 political parties, correct?
So those 3 formed a coalition. So we have mixed member proportional, which I probably voted for, but now in retrospect, it's less like this, isn't it? You vote for something you know nothing about, and then years down the track, you go, that was wrong. That was wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for Americans, it's difficult for us to wrap around our brains around the idea that in other countries, there's multiple political parties, and they form coalitions, groups that have similar but not always overlapping, ideas will have to work together to form a coalition to get a majority.
Yeah. So we had this new government, a coalition of these 3 parties, and then they went into negotiations. They don't get to form the government until they've done that negotiating, say, yes, we can form a government. And they have a majority, not a majority, but they have more than so many seats. So, it's the group that can have a majority vote, basically. But it doesn't mean they have 97 of the seats. So they're more than half, more than the other group. And so we had this coalition government, and I had no idea. I hadn't looked at, I didn't even think one of the parties was going to get in, and they did. And the two of the minor coalition parties had on their pledge, of what they would bring in, was the repeal of this smoke-free act that had passed with these policies in it. And the National Party didn't have it in their pledging. I never saw anything about that. So I was most surprised when the new coalition government announced all of the things they would repeal, all of the laws that the previous government had passed under urgency without proper consultation with the public, etc., and many, many other changes they had made. Radical, shift in culture and everything in New Zealand. And this new coalition government said, in the first 100 days, we're going to repeal this and this and this and this and this. And there was the smoke-free one. And I was like, oh, wow. So this paper that has now been published I wrote obviously before that happened. But it's still of interest, obviously, because the fact that New Zealand was the first country to pass those 3 laws, and they were yet to come in. They hadn't actually taken effect by the time the new government got in. So they've been repealed before they even started, before they were even due to take effect. And then what always has happened in tobacco control at the global level, that group that strategize, and they don't represent everybody in tobacco control, but they just try to get as radical a policy as they can, implemented anywhere. It doesn't matter where. It's the domino effect. Just get it implemented somewhere. And then other countries will go, oh, well, Philippines has done this, or, Russia's done this, or the UK's done this. And then it'll just go boom, 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 boom.
Mm-hmm.
And the people in Hawaii or Brazil or wherever, when they're lobbying for more radical sort of policies on the tobacco control spectrum, they can say, well, New Zealand did it. New Zealand's done it. They don't even necessarily have to say how it's working, whether it's actually working yet, or what the negative and positive effects are. They just need to say, well, New Zealand's done it. Well, Australia's done it.
We had a multi-decade war on drugs, and they continued to pass continuing versions of that year after year after year without actually asking anybody, well, is this working? So, I mean, obviously they don't ever ask if anything is successful. They just keep doing the same old thing.
Yeah, they just need one country to set the precedent. And so the fact that New Zealand passed the law, and then, following on from that will be increased lobbying and advocacy and academic papers written saying, well, New Zealand did it. And even in reaction to my paper, people don't realize it's been repealed already, just like what happened in the Philippines, and just what happened in Hawaii with the age ban.
So the situation is it doesn't matter if the actual bill or laws have been withdrawn or taken away. It's still the fact that perception, politicians pass bills without actually verifying or even caring about how those laws will be perceived by the regular user, but by the people that it's going to affect the most. So here in the States, we have a nicotine, they're pushing, not nicotine. They're pushing for a menthol ban. And they don't realize how disproportionate. Kevin and I had this argument last week about how it disproportionately will here in the States affect different groups, because those people in those groups disproportionately use that product more than the other product, So they don't go around. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are in New Zealand for menthol cigarettes. If a certain demographic of people in New Zealand use menthol cigarettes versus regular cigarettes. But here in the States, African Americans, Black people, LGBTQ people, they tend to smoke menthol cigarettes more than regular cigarettes. And
we haven't, the menthol one, in some ways, I think some of the tobacco control prohibitionists, we used to talk about, you can't go for too many things. Like have 3 things you're going to go for. You don't have a whole menu, when you go to the negotiating table, when you're trying to advocate and negotiate with the government for change, if you have too many things, it leaves too much room for them to push you back down the scale of what you want. So, like choose 3 things, go for those. So what we saw with this proposal that my paper is talking about, there's 5 things there. 3 of them, extreme, untried, untested, just unbelievable policies.
I failed to see what the filter, getting rid of filters is going to do.
You see, that's what tobacco control consider tweaking. The whole purpose is to make it a more unpleasant experience. So it's really tweaking. It's like
wasn't for me because I smoked filterless cigarettes.
But Dr. Glover, people that smoke will adapt and adjust, right? It's just the most idiotic thing, and they're using plastics and pollution to twist the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'll be quiet.
Yeah. So I wanted to, getting back to, I see that you've got highlighted the affective propositional evaluation model. I realize that, so this is a cognitive, it's a psychology model of how do we process, think through, so the cognitive process of thinking through. And because that was kind of my research question, I guess, was how will people process this when it's something completely unknown? In New Zealand, there would have been maybe, 150 people in total, perhaps, who had actually tried a very low nicotine cigarette because they'd been part of a trial. But, the majority of people in New Zealand would never have tried something this low. Many of the studies that have been done and were on low nicotine, ranging from like 2.5 milligrams, or I know in Germany I saw there were some that were for sale at 1 milligrams. So yes, low nicotine cigarettes have been around for a long time, but this is almost virtually no nicotine cigarettes, and the whole concept is like, why would you do that? Because they're still harmful. You're not taking away any of the combustion. So it's I'm amazed that it got as far as it did. The research behind it is sort of, in New Zealand they used a modelling study. So modelling is like crystal ball gazing. You put some figures in and you get some figures out. How can you model something we have no research on? You don't know what the negative, unintended negative effects are going to be, or the positive. You can't put the costs in, etc. So that was where I was going with this. Now, interestingly, the affective, just trying to break it down simply, and for my global GFN5 video, I used a picture of a filing cabinet. So if you think, okay, you ask somebody, and I could say to you, like, how would you like being bowled over by a sheep and have your leg broken? And if you've never you don't even know what a sheep is, or you've never met a sheep, how can you answer that question? So that's what happened to me, by the way. Did you know that in December, early December, Jellybean, our pet Jellybean, it was sharing day, and she was the last one to go up the ramp. She changed her mind, and I'm like, thought I could stop her. She's now 3. She's quite big.
So a ninja attacked sheep, broke your leg, or attacked you?
Yeah. Have you seen that movie, the New Zealand movie Black Sheep? It's about you know, it's a horror movie. The
Uh-huh.
sheep, like, you know, zombies. It's kind of anyway, she changed her mind. I tried to stop her, and she's like huge now, and she bowled me over, rolled me down the hill as she sort of ran over me, and my right ankle, I just felt it sort of squish under my body. I've never had a broken bone in my, I had no idea. See, that's the sort of thing. If someone said, how would you feel if you broke a bone and if sheep rolled you broke your leg? I had absolutely no idea what it would be like. No idea if it hurts, no idea. And it was just a traumatic, because I'm so busy and I've got so much work to do, and to be injured and debilitated and in a cast for 8 weeks and not able to do so much for myself. It was just horrible. Ooh. So I think it's a really important question, research question to ask. How can you ask for people's opinions on something that nobody knows? It's a hypothetical. You can talk about it, but we're talking about a survey. Maybe it's a yes, agree, disagree. You know, so you have a agree, disagree, or yes, no. Do you agree with this? Do you support or not support? I just think it's a nonsense. It's not valid. You have to make sure, if you're going to go and ask people, do you support this policy or that policy or this intervention or strategy to change things? Or do you even support changing things? There's so many layers to it. And yeah, so I think is that the one where I'm using the filing cabinet. So the first thing with a completely untested, like people like, they don't know. So first they might have a reaction, like, especially you say, there's not going to be any nicotine in there, and people will go scratch their head, or they're like, what? You know? And then they go to the first drawer in the filing cabinet, and they try to find any knowledge they might already have. And then the second, so they look for, do I know about this? Have I learnt about this? There's nothing there, because only researchers know about this, and people who might have been told about it. But then I think of the next one, they look for experience. Have I actually experienced this before? Do I know anyone who's experienced this before? What would it be like? People said, it might be like zero alcohol beer, or those fake cigarettes that they smoke in the movies. It was fascinating what people came up with, the associations they tried to draw. You know, one woman said, I think it would be like smoking lawn clippings. You know, it's like people who smoke lawn clippings. And so they look for any experience they've had, or any experience they know of other people that might have had some experience, just trying to think through, what might they know about it. And then the next, if you say there's nothing in the two drawers they've been to, they then go to their values, and does it align with their values? So people who don't like totalitarian government control over citizens, that they're going to use that as a value and go, no, that sounds like it clashes with my values. Others are like, I want children in the future to not have to go through what I have and become addicted to this. That sounds like it would align with my value of, am I wanting that? So they look at their values and their goals, and they try and, I think it would align with some goal I have. So on that basis, and then they would often say, I support measures to prevent children from taking up smoking. But the way you're going to achieve it, I'm not sure about that. So it was just absolutely fascinating. We have over 40 people's reactions, their initial kind of emotional reaction. They're like, some of them quite shocked. They go, "Oh my God!" Or so. And then all of the steps they went through, and it's almost like you can almost hear people thinking it through, and they even would ask questions. So they're basically, because you're interviewing them and you're waiting for them to speak, and they are thinking out loud, and we're recording it, and we're able to, using that model, capture bits of their speech, what they're saying. And so they go, but are they really going to get away with that? Someone said, are they going to get away with that? And so they're thinking through, going through each drawer in the filing cabinet, trying to make sense of the policy. And many of them said, well, I don't know. I can't give an opinion on that. I just don't know. So people suspend judgment because they're like, why don't they do a trial? Some of them even said, why don't they do a trial where people get to try their own, or a usual strength cigarette, and they try one of these others and see what they think. So I think it's really, obviously, I think it's important because, as you guys know, we think that consumers' voices are important. Consumers know best about these products and about what the effects of them. And so I just loved it. I loved that consumers, people who vape, people who are vaping and smoking, that they're not dumb, and they need to be listened to. And so it's a long paper, and there are supplementary tables where I've put the statements that were made in a table. So which filing cabinet is it? Is it their initial emotional reaction? And then what was their initial emotional reaction to the denicotinization, to the banning filters, etc., to each of the policies? And that table is, I think, quite easy for people to skim through, and you're getting, that's the data. That's the data we coded to each of those policies, and the model, the type of cognition, checking against values or looking for associations. So it's a quick way to sort of, read through the statements that we pulled out, and you can see that there's a wide range of things that, so the supplementary, if you go down on the left of the screen, you'll see at the bottom of that outline list, there should be something at the bottom. If you keep going down, it says some tables. Then it's got supplementary. But they want you to upload it, to download those supplementary files. So if you go down, you see just a bit further on the left.
I'm verifying that I'm a human.
All right.
So that I can get the actual PDF file.
Yeah. So the supplementary files are not in that one.
Oh, they're not.
No, that's the paper, and then there's supplementary files, and that's where the more detailed. I'm
going to download them all.
Yeah, it will ask you to download them all. While you're doing that, as I said at the beginning of our discussion, I really had hoped that this paper would come out earlier, when New Zealand, when the discussion at a policy level was happening. But unfortunately, the publishing merry-go-round is as it is. And, so I've put this paper to a number of journals and revised the paper a number of times. And, great to have reviewers' comments. That always helps to improve a paper. But one of the barriers to work coming out that is like this, that reports on consumers' perspectives, especially people who smoke, people who vape, is that perception or that belief out there that you guys don't count. Oh, you're well aware of it. You all experience it. I know every day on Twitter, and it's very bad for some people's health, and I worry about that too. But here's what one anonymous reviewer said of a previous journal, not the one that have published in SSM, Qualitative Research in Health, and I don't remember which journal it was, but they said in policy analysis and benefit cost analysis, there are strong concerns about addressing the preferences of individuals suffering from addiction. That is, the preferences and utilities of individuals who are dealing with addiction. So it is not clear to me why the opinions of smokers are of high relevance. So this is, what they're saying is, because I'm like, these are key stakeholder group. One of my previous headings for the paper was about a key stakeholder group and their views on the Endgame policies. And this reviewer is like, they're not a key stakeholder. You shouldn't even listen to them. Because why? Because they're addicted and they've been possessed by the substance that they're addicted to. They can't think for themselves. It's this whole, that's a thread of belief in tobacco control. And, so that's one of the barriers and that caused it to take so long for me to actually get this paper accepted and published. Now, that's the table I was telling you about, and it's a lot easier to read than the academic paper, I realize. But these are the sorts of things people were saying. So the first one, if you can just move to the left and you see the first column, can you move it over a bit so we can see that first column that's cut off? Anyway, this is the affective. So this is the emotional reaction. And how do people emotionally react when they first heard about the policy? And you can see that with denicotinization, there's quite a bit of shock, some anger, and also with the age ban, astonishment. Are you joking? And then with the banning filters, even people were kind of confused by that. It's or curious, like, interesting, not sure. It's a shame that you can't hear their actual voices. I listened to all of the interviews. I could hear their actual, the tone and everything. And then the number of retailers, someone's like, wow, that'll be a major change. Some people like, oh, I don't think that'll stop anyone. And then in the minimum pricing. So there's a lot more response to the denicotinization. And the theory I used indicates that means that one is more novel. It's more strange. They knew less about that, and they'll ask more questions. And there's a lot more, what I call in the paper, cognitive load. People are having to think a lot more about that one than about minimum pricing. Minimum pricing, they've all, pretty much realized, they know all about taxes going up every year, up and up. And the reaction to minimum pricing was kind of resignation. They felt like there's nothing we can do about that. They're just going to keep doing it. Yeah. So that table is that's got all the little pieces of data, the statements people said, and in the order of the the model I use, what kind of cognition was it. So, people were like, yeah, alcohol sort of thing, everyone's just targeting smoking, but not all these other things. People talk about, oh, that'll just be another nail and, in the coffin of democracy. They were a diverse group with diverse views, and every single one of them are legitimate and deserving of an audience. So I feel very proud to bring their voice to the public's attention, and this is what's actually going on. In terms of the implications of this, and I talk a lot about policy analysis. I trained in policy analysis, and I have been very unhappy and shocked at the breakdown in the policy analysis process, that stakeholders, a whole group of stakeholders, several groups of stakeholders are just being what do they do to us? I've forgotten the word.
Demonization,
stigmatize,
belittled, ridiculed, cancelled.
Turn everybody against you. Brainwash the masses against you.
That, and even I've seen it in the process, the select committee hearing process with many people who have moved to New Zealand and run a small corner store, convenience store, and how brave of them that they, English is a second language, and they went and wanted to present to the politicians who were considering this policy, and they did speak, and the way some of those politicians treated them, ridiculed them, and it was abusive in my eye. And and that's what's happening. If you don't listen to the people, I mean, there's a very good section in there about the negative effects, and a lot of them, because when they're trying to evaluate and make a judgment, and they're trying to think, well, how will this affect people? Yeah, the negative consequences. And there's all sorts of things in there. Some of them, won't be a surprise to anyone. But then they, what was the one if you go across to the filters? And they're like, oh, as you said, people will adapt. And like one person's like, oh, yeah, people will just use cardboard. And I know people that have actually used tampons. Tampons? So people are going to cut up tampons to make a filter. And it's like, oh, no, this is not right. Don't put people in that position where they're going to go to measures that they have to do that, picking up cigarettes off the side of the road to get the filters out of, or and then that was a good one. How many tourists are going to say, yeah, we're not going to go to New Zealand, you can't even have a ciggy. This is happening now here about Australia. Like, and just among people I know, it's like, should we go to Australia for a holiday? No, you can't vape there. Yeah. So Australia's off the list. All the people who don't smoke, people who don't vape, go have a good time. But there's a whole lot of other people now. You can't vape there. That's what everybody thinks. You won't be able to buy e-liquid. They don't even. It's not even clear if it's going to be taken off you. So that was a good one that someone came up with. What about tourism? Tourism's been extremely important for New Zealand. So it's an important, international revenue stream, and so a whole lot of people just not going to come here anymore because it's smoke-free country. You won't be able to. In that case, where are you going to get your cigarettes from? So it was just amazing, the range of things people thought would happen. Yeah, otherwise people are going to end up smoking marijuana. Marijuana is still illegal in New Zealand. There's legalized medicinal marijuana.
But people still do it.
Yes, of course, and we
people still
won't
do
go
it.
into youth vaping, but the 15 to 17-year-olds have a much higher rate of smoking marijuana than they do of vaping. But everyone like vaping,
Yes.
And yes, so it was, I think, fascinating to hear people's views. I make the point in the paper that surveys, polls that use like a forced choice, agree, disagree, or a Likert scale where we say strongly agree, neutral, that
Disagree.
we have
Slightly
choices.
Yeah.
And you need to look at what was the question that was asked. Are they actually asking people? And I knew they couldn't have, because the policy hadn't been, the detail was never put out there. We weren't told it was going to be 0.8%, 0.8 milligrams per gram nicotine until the legislation passed. Before that, it was just talking about 5% or below, 0.5 milligrams. We didn't know how many shops. Well, they're going to go from 6,000 to what? They said 600 to 800. Detail was missing, and people were being asked to pass a judgment on whether they supported it or not. So scientifically, I think that there's, there are flaws in terms of the design of some surveys that need to be looked at. The question that is asked, it's very important that questions are not leading, and how can you ask people about something they know nothing about? This study of ours shows exactly that, in terms of, did people understand the 3 untested, untried, ever in the real life anywhere in the world policies enough to pass an opinion on them? No, they did not. And they say so themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They say, I don't know enough about it. We need to do more research on it. That doesn't mean that they didn't support the intent of the policies, that they didn't support, New Zealand should do something about preventing children from taking up smoking. Many of them did support the intent, but supporting the intent is not the same as, okay, government, we really support the intent. We should do something about reducing smoking among children, and you decide what you do. That's well, in a democracy, that's not how it's done.
Yeah.
And some of them talked about, I talk in the paper about the policy process needs to be perceived as fair and just. And one of the participants said it's not fair. They talked about the injustice. We have a wide range of participants in age as well, which is unusual. Many studies don't bother to include older people. We have people at 4 years ago who were 82.
Wow.
And I think one of them on the website is called Bled. He's a real character. He's still going strong. He's still smoking. He's still growing his own, and he's fishing. And he's got a young partner. She's only 50, and he's a fantastic character. He never wants to stop smoking. Why would I enjoy it? And I'm healthy, So there are people like that, and policies need to be made for society as a whole, taking into account the perspectives and needs and effects that will occur for everybody in society, not just the elite, higher socioeconomic academics that have a particular ideology and want everybody to obey them
because
they say
they say so.
Yeah, and I mean, I was obviously concerned about the negative effects, but really for me it was about, this isn't the what about what about the consumers? They deserve to be heard, and plus they're the ones who will have really deep insight into what will happen, how will people adapt. Yeah. So, I mean, I hope people read it. At least there's a supplementary table that, gives you a quick look at what people said, and then some of the discussion. There's a journalist has done a bit of a review, and I was very happy that the paper is accessible. It just is obviously a scientific paper. And
well, you didn't know that science was only for people that actually subscribe to the website?
Yeah.
Sorry?
A lot of the studies that we try to look into are behind a paywall.
Yeah.
So science, the only people that are deserving of the science are the people that pay the subscription.
So only the pretty people.
On Science Direct, most of the studies on Science Direct are open. So we love that. But yeah, no, if you didn't know that science was only for the paying customer.
Yeah, so I have to say I don't agree with that. I do support open access. So this paper is open access. That means that the researcher pays to have it open access. So you have the publishing house that makes a lot of money, and they charge universities and libraries have to pay a subscription to get to the science, and individuals if they want to buy it. And then in this case, where the researchers like, I support open access, I want my paper to be able to be seen by anybody who wants to read it, then we have to pay, and it's available, so anyone can access that and download it and read it at their leisure.
My wife is in nurse practitioner school right now to become a nurse practitioner. And last semester was a lot of research projects, and I was on every database that I could possibly be on to try to find research that met the criteria for their analysis, because they were doing a statistics class, and you had to be able to find the right models and everything, and finding good research on a specific topic is always frustrating when it's behind a paywall.
Yes.
But speaking of nurse practitioner, she's taking pharmacology right now, and she's reading. She's at the chapter that's NRT, nicotine replacement, addiction, blah 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 blah, and there's a whole 4 or 5 pages in the chapter about how evil vaping and how addictive nicotine is, and she's just like, she says, I know better, but I have to memorize this for the test.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And I'm just like, she knows, she's been in my world. She's been in this, with me for 12 years or 15 years or whatever now. And she understands the real truth, but she's like, oh, I have to pass this test, so I have to memorize this crap in this.
That's terrible. Yeah. It's, and that's why so many, even, medical doctors and general practitioners around the world, why the belief that nicotine causes cancer is so
70%.
high. Yeah, it's and it's very concerning. I think that it's very important that more research is done on how to counter misinformation and disinformation. Disinformation is where they're deliberately, like the World Health Organization is almost on a daily basis, deliberately putting out false information about vaping. And misinformation that's presumably there's not that ill intent behind it. It just is wrong. And I have had, for another paper that is on the publishing merry-go-round, looked at misinformation and how do you counter it.
So for this particular paper, if the government is making proposals like this with 5 off the wall, untested plans. We'll just call them plans. And you're talking to the members of the 5%. You're talking to the people that your research group or whatever, your target audience. And the government is proposing to do these things without actually informing the people of what their policy actually is. How can these people feel like they're being represented when nobody's actually talking to them or communicating with them what exactly it is that they're proposing to do? It's same here when the government passes, huge omnibus legislative packages here that are sometimes as many as 10,000 pages long. They hand the bill to the staff of the politician and say, we're voting on this tomorrow. Even the politicians don't understand what they're voting for.
A perfect example of that is what happened in Australia with the recent select committee hearing, and Colin Mendelsohn, Dr. Colin Mendelsohn presented, and I saw a small clip of his presentation yesterday, and there was another one where one of the politicians on the committee asked about the filters in e-cigarettes. It's like they don't even know what the product is. They don't have sufficient information. They don't have sufficient knowledge to be making any decisions about Australians' regulation on vaping. And I think it's a huge problem. Democracy's great. Of course, we don't want to go to totalitarian states, etc. Many of us, some do, but it is an ongoing problem that politicians are making life and death decisions, and they don't even understand the topic, and they don't understand the product. I'm actually reviewing a paper at the moment, and the author has made a similar oversight where they don't realize there are no filters in e-cigarettes.
Right.
They're talking about filters. And I'm like,
so they see these presentational videos on YouTube. We showed one a while back where they were in England and they pulled it was actually in Australia. They pulled a vape apart, one of the disposable ones, and there's a big, huge, the wick.
Oh, yeah.
The big huge, and I swear they are probably, somebody in their staff showed them that video and they assumed that cotton was a filter instead of the wicking material. That has to be the only, to me, the
only reference they got.
The only possible way.
Well, when people don't understand the product, many researchers have jumped on the funding bandwagon gravy train to do research on vaping. It's a hot topic, and they may have no background at all in tobacco control, in smoking, in nicotine, nothing. But many research, just like what happened during the pandemic, many researchers were like the funding just went whoosh away from everything else, and they would fund anything to do with the pandemic, and all the researchers went whoosh. I'm quick, think up a study on the pandemic. And this is the same with vaping. And so there's, I'm tobacco section editor of the Harm Reduction Journal, so I do get to see some of these papers actually make it through and get published in some journals, where the researchers clearly have no idea about vaping, only what they've, the misinformation that they've seen on the news, and they often don't even know about smoking, apart from the very general stuff that they're learning in medical school or in, public health or in the courses. And so this is this sort of corruption of the scientific knowledge that is happening because, and what was I going to say about them not knowing? Oh, so you're talking about menthol bans, and that's another policy that's going around, or maybe implemented somewhere in the States, I'm not sure, but where they banned flavors in combustible cigarettes. So that's like the banning the menthol, but also banning, you know, menthol, banning any flavor except it can only be tobacco. So of course, the adaptations that occur is putting a flavored filter in it, or the capsules, capsule of flavor that's embedded in the cigarette, and at some point, people are smoking and that bursts. So the adaptations that are created to get round the ban on having anything other than tobacco flavor in it, and I think that some of the confusion is, a person's read about filters, having flavored filters to get around a flavor ban on a vaping flavor ban, and then they read something that says, oh, they're putting a flavored filter, and they clearly don't know that this is an adaptation that's being used in cigarettes, combustible cigarettes, not vape. And it's like, yeah.
Well, I mean, these people, Paul's bringing this up in the chat room. These people don't really understand the whole process that occurs when they process tobacco. When they put it in aging rooms, they put it in smoking rooms to dry it out. They use different additives. They do use, brown sugars and chocolates and things like that to flavor the regular cigarette tobacco. That's why every cigarette doesn't taste the same. Dried fruits. They do all sorts of stuff to make their cigarette individual. Marlboro doesn't taste like a Camel, doesn't taste like a, so during the process of drying the tobacco out, they're adding different things. So no, even a combustible cigarette is flavored tobacco.
Yeah. That's right. It's, so that is very frustrating. We have a sort of long haul in front of us, and I know there's a lot of scientists working on misinformation, but even as pro-tobacco harm reduction and harm reduction scientists are working on, we're going to have to do something to address misinformation. Tobacco control prohibitionists are saying exactly the same thing. Oh, we've got to do something to address misinformation, and they're doing
they don't recognize the misinformation that they are perpetuating.
Yeah, so they like, oh no, everything you say is misinformation. No, everything you say is misinformation, and it's like,
Patrick's wife is a perfect example. If Patrick hadn't been a person who's vaping and done what he's done all these years, his wife would have taken that class, course, whatever it was, and went, "Whoa, this is bad," and continued on her day.
Yeah,
just indoctrinated right straight in.
I did ask her. I said, if your textbook says that nicotine is so addictive, and it specifically says, how addictive nicotine is. I said, how comes we don't see nicotine, people addicted to the nicotine patch? You don't see support groups to help people get off of the nicotine patch. You don't see support groups for nicotine gum. These approved products. I said, if nicotine by itself was so addictive, why are we not seeing people robbing convenience stores for nicotine gum, or going to the drugstore armed robbing? Because it's not true. There is nicotine by itself is not positively reinforcing enough by itself to be as addictive as heroin, as many people will tell you. Oh, nicotine is the most addictive substance on the planet. But
I didn't have the chat open. I'm just realized, and so I'm not sure if there were any questions there that.
I haven't seen any specific questions, but if anybody wants to ask a question, go ahead. Mara was here. to ask away.
And I should say, and you just reminded me, so what has happened in New Zealand? There's, obviously the proponents of the Endgame policies have been very, very upset. And they've been making a lot of, they've been getting a lot of media attention and trying everything they can think of to, the government is so bad and whatever. So what the government did, they repealed the denicotinization, they repealed the reduction in numbers of stores, and they repealed the age ban parts of the law. The other stuff is remaining. The previous government had already said they were going to ban disposables, and this new government has gone ahead with that as well. However, even before that came into effect, Steve and I went to an expo here, and all of the manufacturers had adapted to the new criteria. So we're still they're basically pod systems with a removable battery and a refillable pod and a child safety mechanism. So you might have an e-cigarette, you've got to go, it comes apart into two pieces, and you've got to go click, 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 and then it sticks together like by magnet. So they've already adapted to that part of it. What this new government has done is increase the fine for selling vape products to under 18-year-olds from $10,000 to $100,000. So they're really trying to clamp down on the sales to minors. They have not let go of that. They are planning to increase monitoring and enforcement of the law. And the other thing that really surprised me, when the vaping regulation went through under the previous government, proposed by the previous government before that, but they banned the oral nicotine pouches. Now, we had the oral nicotine pouches on sale here, and also people could buy snus. Don't think I saw snus for sale, but that's because it would have attracted the tobacco tax, which is massive. But oral nicotine pouches were for sale when we were in the unregulated realm of vaping. Then the vaping regulation passed, and the Ardern government banned oral nicotine pouches. The new government are going to repeal that as well, so that oral nicotine pouches and snus, and they also talked about, anyway, so they will be able to be sold again. I don't know if that part of it's been done yet. They had a big work program. And the other thing that they are doing to help and support people to switch from smoking to risk-reduced products, they want to take the tobacco tax, off any of the non-combustible products. So we've always had the heat not burn, just because advertising is banned, nobody knew about it. But the heat not burn, because it has tobacco in it, was attracting that very high tobacco tax. This new government are like, well, we're going to take the tax off, because they understand about the proportionate, you must have proportionate taxation.
Right.
The combustible products have a high tax. The risk-reduced ones need to be not taxed at the same rate to encourage people to switch to them. So they're doing that as well. Yeah. They're going to review the smoking cessation programs to make sure that they're effective. They're particularly going to focus on the groups where smoking is, higher prevalence. And there was something else that you reminded me of: nicotine replacement products. So since 2006, in New Zealand, if you smoke and you need nicotine replacement product, you can get the patch, the gum, an 8-week supply. In fact, for many years now, anyone can go and they can just stay on it. Yeah. So the understanding is, like, as long as you're not smoking, that's good. if you need to keep using the patch to keep you off smoking, we're fine. Here it is. It's free. It's free in New Zealand. The patch and the gum and the lozenge. So in a ministry briefing paper, this new government are planning to increase the range of nicotine replacement products that are available. And also, it shouldn't just be one brand. So they're talking about we'll have more brands of nicotine replacement products available, so different brands of patches, gum, lozenge, the inhalator, and the mic, and the oral, and the spray.
Yeah.
At the moment, people can go buy the spray. It's like $46 at our supermarket. And that's all going to be free to help people, give them as many options as possible to switch from smoking to any of these nicotine replacement products. Oral nicotine pouches, heat not burn, if you even know about it, is there as well. And of course, vaping. They're not banning the flavors. They're not, definitely trying to cut down on minors vaping, definitely going down that track, and trying to do everything they can to just make it available for adults who smoke. Yeah.
So Victoria is asking, what about the nicotine level in e-liquid? Because she's using the word juice, and I don't like that. So
yes, there has been a restriction put on the nicotine level. So there was a lot of confusion. Again, you have people, why don't they ask the vapor? The people who vape know this, but, a lot of confusion around the difference between nicotine salt and freebase. And so the limit was set in the vaping regulation at 50 milligrams. And then the calculation, like people were going, what, 50 milligrams of nicotine salt? Yeah. So there was some confusion around that. So they've reduced it to 20 milligrams. But that in nicotine salt, that you can still get 40 in nicotine salt. Yeah.
So in freebase, you're saying it's 20, but
milligrams.
In nicotine salt, it's 40.
Well, when you do the calculation, it works out that you're getting just over 40, right? If you calculate from how much nicotine is in nicotine salts.
Right. So as somebody who dislikes nicotine salts immensely, personally, I couldn't tell you if there is for me as just experientially, what amount of nicotine salts would equate to the same experience I get at 12 milligram freebase, because physiologically it feels completely different to me.
And of course, there's a lot of variability in terms of device and power and all of the other things. If you're using a box mod or so when the alarm and the kind of reefer madness happened around disposables and young people vaping, they were using this. Oh, they're vaping like 60 milligrams. Well, that's not 60 milligrams freebase. It's not nowhere near that. We're not talking 60 milligrams freebase. That's nicotine salts. So yeah, there has been some limit. Most people I know are going to be fine. If they went 20 milligram nicotine salt, then then they'd be going to freebase, I reckon. Yeah.
Yeah, but like I said, 20 milligrams of nicotine salt in my experience has no throat hit to me at all. It's extremely non-threatening. I don't want to use the word threatening, but
unsatisfying.
But 12 milligram of freebase nicotine, I can feel my throat hit. That's what I want. I don't want a smooth vape because I don't want to be sitting here all day puffing on it. I just want to get my experience and go on about my business.
Yeah. So it is frustrating. I mean, I really, I think we had a tobacco regulatory advisory or vaping regulatory advisory group, and I hear rumors that it's been disbanded or something. I think the main thing is that, we are on track to catch up to Sweden. Sweden's like on the cusp of 5%.
They're at 6%. Is what they reported last.
That's right. Like 5.8. We're at 6.8. That's daily, the daily rate.
Mm-hmm.
I use the daily rate because the daily rate reflects the group of people who smoke who have a tendency, and they are
real world.
Yeah, and there are people who are dependent and can't afford to smoke every day, of course, and so they eke it out. But 5% or below smoking prevalence, if we look at the daily rate, then we're nearly there. And people were saying this, why pass all of these policies that are not going to come in until, like, the age ban wasn't going to come until 2027? It's redundant. It's redundant. And that's another, as a policy analyst, it's another thing you would look at. One, is this pragmatic? What's all the evidence for and against? What are the costs going to be? Are the costs going to be equitably experienced across society, or are some groups going to be a more cost? Like, you live in a rural area. My sister still lives in a rural area. It takes her like 15 to 20 minutes to drive down to the nearest little block of petrol station and a supermarket convenience type store. It takes her an hour and something to go to the nearest big town where there's a supermarket. So how far away from her was there going to be a store where she could buy cigarettes? She's going to have to, people would have to stock up, and that's what the participants in the study were saying.
Yeah,
people will have to stock up. Yeah, and people would have to stock up, but some people can't afford to stock up, So we have, I think it's Bob, one of our participants, Bob, can't afford to pay $100 to buy 50 milligram of loose tobacco, a pouch, 50 milligrams. We only have them in 30 milligrams because of minimum pack sizing. So if your minimum pack size is 30 milligrams and it's now $75 and you're on a sickness benefit, you can't afford to buy the loose tobacco. All you can afford to buy on a weekly basis is the packet of cigarettes, which is a packet of 20 is now, like, I think he gets it for $37, and that's from a discount tobacconist. $37 for 20 cigarettes. And then he will pull them apart, get all the tobacco out so he can roll his skinny racehorse, his skinny cigarettes. So he can make one cigarette, he can get like 4 to 5 skinny rollies out of it. Anyway, I'm very, very happy to let you know in advance that 4 years now, he's gone down from what he says he smokes there, which I think was 4 to 5 of those skinny rollies a day, which is equal to like one cigarette. Or did he say whatever he said 4 years ago? I've just interviewed him again recently. He is down to one skinny rollie a day. However, he's vaping more.
Yeah.
So that transition for people from smoking cigarettes to vaping, it's, the smoking goes down. How's it go? Smoking goes down and vaping goes up. And it can be over years. Some people can transition very quickly. And for Bob, who's been smoking since he was a teenager, I think in the army, and he's in his 60s now, it's taken a long time to completely, and he's not completely transitioned, but he pretty much almost has. And we're on to writing up our 4-year results. and I'm yet to publish the 2-year results. So spending a lot of time writing results and doing analysis. But I'm still here and try to keep track of what's being done to you guys and the state of this battle. Because without these risk-reduced products available for people, then the smoking-related disease and the premature deaths from smoking will continue. And I believe that it is absolutely unnecessary. People who have been smoking for many years and already perhaps have diseases already started and or set in, let's put them aside. But there's no reason for smoking-related death and disease to continue in the world anymore. This vaping particularly is a perfect substitute for cigarettes. Many people, what is it now? Nearly 1 million or more. It's more than 1 million. 1 billion? I think it's quite high now. Millions of people have en masse transitioned from smoking to vaping.
Oh, it depends on who you ask. Worldwide, something like 50 million.
Yeah.
Worldwide.
I think that the Global Forum on Nicotine, they have a website that has that sort of thing up. But it's just, as a professor of public health, it's just shocking and disappointing to me that we now can prevent. It's always been preventable, but we now have pragmatic, effective, proven ways to reduce the rate of smoking-related illnesses and death in the world. And I'm not sure how long these prohibitionists are going to hold it up, whether it's going to be another 10, 20, 30 years before they allow people to have access to these products that could save their life.
Yep.
Hear, hear.
Crazy. So I have a question, Dr. Glover. On it's two-part really. On the dual use, when I think it was Bob transitioning, what I learned over the past 10 years is dual use is really actually normal when they're using the patch and the gum. So that part kind of stunned me, but then I realized, and Patrick and I have talked about it 100 times, the dose, the milligram on the patch is low. So then I read somewhere that I read it on the internet that if you use 2 patches or more gum, you're increasing the nicotine. Now, I think it's a very low success rate for those products, but they should be available. That I don't dispute. But if they're not being told, people, that A, they can smoke while they use them, and B, they should increase the dosage, since the pharmaceutical companies don't want that when they're selling them. They want them to be low grade. Can, like, for instance, you guys in your country say, hey, you can take 2 of these a day and slap one on both arms. You know what I mean? If that helps people, it's always seemingly never been known publicly that you could. I was told when I took my prescription, I'm old enough to have a prescription for the patch. He said, don't smoke, you'll die. You just got to put this on and quit. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I put it on it with 2 weeks, and I didn't kill anyone. And I said, no, I can't do this. So that was part of the question is, can the government say, well, add more patches to your arm, whatever you need. If it really works, you'd think they would, or tobacco control would in that case.
I think, if we look at the misinformation, disinformation strategy and the logic is, and you can see the strategy. So I think you were actually tweeting about this my morning, your day, I think I saw you tweet something, and it was about. So the strategy starts with conflate smoking, tobacco smoking, with vaping. They'll get everyone to believe that these are the same thing. They're not the same thing, but get everyone to believe that what does the harm, what causes smoking-related diseases. I say smoking-related because that is what is causing the diseases, and some toxic chewing products in India that have a mixture of different toxins in them, that have some tobacco in them, also cause oral cancers. But that's and you have that in the States as well. I think you have some toxic chewing products. So in the States, you've got smoking-related diseases, and you have some related to chewing products that have a high, content of toxins in them.
Yeah.
So what we've seen is that the tobacco control prohibitionist movement they conflate smoking and tobacco, and now they just use the word tobacco. And so if I get a paper to review for the Harm Reduction Journal and they're talking about tobacco-related diseases, I'm like, cross that out, and I'm back to, you're talking about smoking-related diseases. Use the specific term for the purpose. I do not like this conflating thing they're doing. It is a tactic. So let's get everyone believing that it's tobacco in any form that causes these diseases. So that's the first step. Then if you
now they're just doing nicotine. Now they're just saying a nicotine-free future or a
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So then they conflate tobacco and nicotine. What is it about tobacco that causes the disease? Oh, that's the nicotine. And then the logic goes, if nicotine is what causes the disease, then any product with nicotine causes disease, the diseases, that all that research proving that smoking causes lung cancer, cardiovascular disease, etc., applies to any product that has nicotine, because it's nicotine that does it. So this is it's a corrupt strategy. It's about trying to get people to think that a constituent of the tobacco, let's not talk about the method of use, just the constituent of tobacco is what causes lung cancer. No, smoking causes lung cancer. If you smoked something else at the same rate that you have smoked a cigarette, so let's say you smoke 20, 30 cigarettes a day, 40 cigarettes a day. Well, let's replace that with marijuana, with joints. Okay, 40 joints a day, you have smoked for 40 years. Okay, welcome to lung cancer. It's the smoke. I think someone said that, didn't they? It's the smoke, stupid. And so we see this manipulation of the public, of politicians, and even of students in universities, which I do not agree with. They're there to learn the truth, or what we know is the truth, and they're being deliberately fed lies. And as you said, Patrick, they've got to memorize it and spit it back in the test to pass. This is wrong. So that conflation.
It's not education. It's not education. It's indoctrination.
It is indoctrination. Right. And so to counter this misinformation, we need to, people need to understand the tactics and strategies that are being used to manipulate the public and the politicians. And as we saw in Australia, some of the politicians are pretty vulnerable to manipulation and don't have, they don't seem to have the wherewithal. And yet they're doing it every day. Politicians use these tactics every day.
Air of authority.
And yet when it's done to them, they I don't know, how do you up the intelligence of
I've been trying.
they were supposed to rely on, the government ministries and the government policy advisors are supposed to say, okay, well, this is what the evidence says. You still might not make any difference to a politician who has a particular ideological bent, and they just, largely they just want to stay in. They want votes, and
Well, you've given voice to people. My silly little survey, it was our voices, our results, confirmation bias on some level, but how else am I going to get it? Nobody else would do it, evidently. And there were a few that I didn't know about, obviously, but before me. But you're asking people, real humans, not bots, to answer your questions, and for that I love you dearly for. Because how are you not going to know, and then just say, well, this is bad, stop doing that, don't do that because we say so. You're showing multi-layered answers from people who are affected by it, or their friends or loved ones. So that's a huge thing for me to digest, that a researcher anywhere is going, wow, they care about what we think. Holy crap. So
and the other thing is, of course, some researchers don't care about what you think, and they will recruit you into their studies and pull out whatever data serves their purpose, which is this advocating for prohibition. And that's happened to many people who vape, I know in Australia and around the world. And we have talked about that before. I think that this, what that reviewer said about, well, your views are tarnished by the possession you're suffering, because you're possessed by addiction, by nicotine, and you can't think straight. That kind of thinking is actually not uncommon among public health academics. This sort of thing that the public are too dumb, they're not intelligent enough, and they're biased because, of a substance or whatever. They're addicted to alcohol, or they're addicted to, and that just doesn't fit with harm reduction theory, that consumers, people know best what they can pragmatically do, what steps they can pragmatically take in their life, given their circumstances, to reduce their risk of harm. There are many ways that people can reduce risk of harm. And we need to, if you are working with someone, you need to learn about the context of their life, the pressures and stresses. They may not be able to afford to undertake a cessation program or to pay for the medicine that was prescribed. And that's why, for example, as I said, in New Zealand, the patches are free. So that barrier is removed. The misinformation about nicotine, however, has not been removed. And why are people going to go and put a nicotine patch on when it's nicotine that they've been told it's nicotine that is toxic and kills?
It just seems to me that, one of the major tenets of harm reduction, whether it's drug policy, drug harm reduction, whether it, is you have to meet your target where they are.
Start where they're at,
and literally, if you said to any progressive that was pro drug policy correction, or let's be as empathic and soft on the drug side, the same people that are out there screaming that we need to have safe injection sites and safe drug supply and methadone for anybody that needs it, are also the same people, at least in our country, the same people that are pushing back against tobacco harm reduction. And then I just saw this week somebody repeated the nonsense that the phrase tobacco harm reduction was a tobacco industry talking point that nobody
a clown.
but only
Clown.
people in the tobacco business use the word tobacco harm reduction.
Clown.
Yeah, I mean, it is one thing I come across a small challenge when editing papers for the harm reduction journal, because people will send in a paper and they'll say it's about tobacco harm reduction, but they are talking about a product as being, you can have a risk reduced product. The harm reduction journal is about harm reduction as a theory. It's an approach to reducing harm. The harm reduction journal is very interested in, for example, policies that cause harm. So it's all about harm. You could even, the harm reduction journal would potentially be interested in, say, the harms that, laws that cause harm. So it's about people first and working with people, as you say, where they are, respect. And so many people think, I'll send my paper to harm reduction journal because it's about a particular new oral nicotine pouch, especially some of the FDA. The FDA has required mountains of research, and so companies are having to do mountains of research, and then they think, oh, well, we'll get it published in a scientific journal. But unfortunately, science starts with a scientific research question about building the knowledge base. It doesn't start with if FDA asked us, demanded that we do this, so we've done this research because it was a compliance requirement. That's not really a research question scientifically. A science one would be about building our knowledge. How do people process a novel, completely untried, untested concept policy? And then how can you research and find out what people think about it? In the paper, I do say, going back to the paper, there's plenty of precedents for novel, untested, untried concepts that society has to grapple with. We could talk about AI, for instance, and the many AI related technologies that are developing and that are going to happen. And some of them we need to be talking about. And so a couple of examples we use in the paper was genetic modification. That was one in New Zealand, like incredible amount of consultation was done, workshops. I've also done research around assisted human reproduction technology. And, so some of the research, we would go and we would have, I obviously was doing that with Māori, and we would go and have a large meeting. Our way was that if a meeting like that is open, so people, anyone can come. So one meeting, I think I had about 60 people. And so it's sort of focus group, but it's like, that's a big focus group. How are you going to record all that? But, assisted reproductive technology, IVF and all of that was once new. And there are still some people who are skeptical about it, the ethics of.
I can remember when IVF first came out and the first children of those types of unions, we'll just call it a union, were being born, and there was a stigma attached to those kids. They were called test tube babies.
That's right.
Yep.
And obviously now it's a miracle because people that were previously infertile or unable to, to have a child or to reproduce are now able to. And here we have reductionist assholes in some states in the United States that are now banning IVF.
Really?
Yes.
So,
Alabama, the state of 99% sure that it's the state of Alabama just banned IVF treatments.
Well, why would they do that?
Because
it wasn't God's.
Some ultra religious people have decided.
Yep, it's Alabama.
If God wanted you to have children, you would have.
Yeah, and then obviously the I guess it was an argument about some of the pre-fertilized frozen embryos of couples who owned possession of these, if they divorced, who got possession or who got custody of the previously fertilized embryo.
Yeah.
It's just but it was Alabama. I was right. Alabama Supreme Court has now ruled that IVF is now illegal.
But imagine the word, test tube baby, the stigma even for that in that world. That's insane.
Back in I can remember like really far, ultra religious evangelicals saying that those babies did not have souls,
right?
Because they were test tube babies.
So that's something that I've done some research on, and those types of views were definitely expressed by some people. And so that's what you get when you have a new technology, and you want to, you need to develop policies around it. So genetic modification of organisms, that was a very long process in New Zealand, and I was involved in the assisted human reproductive, the consultation around that, and also all of the very challenging ethical questions that arise, like surrogacy and the different. So in New Zealand, we have two committees, one that oversees the ethics of assisted human reproductive technology procedures and everything, and another one there's the ethics one, and then there's one committee, like if you get a brother and a sister, for example, and one or the other can't have children or is infertile. So you do get some out of the ordinary, like relationships, and they want to use the services so somebody can have a child. And though unusual arrangements will go to a government-appointed committee to be discussed, there are ways to involve the public, bring their knowledge up, have discussions, help people to understand a novel concept, whether it's a novel technology. And we among us, we don't think vaping is novel. It's been around now for 20 years. And we know people who have been vaping for 16 years. So among us, it's not novel, but perhaps more should have been done early on to help the public understand. And in New Zealand, we've been lucky that the government has run campaigns educating people about vaping, obviously saying it is for smoking cessation only. It's for adults only. It's for smoking cessation only. But, I think that the government support of using vaping as a smoking cessation device really did make a difference in terms of people overcoming the barrier of, fear about this new product, and hence our rates, 6.8%. I just really, really happy, and also the rate among Māori has dropped. So I talked about 50% 30 years ago, 19% now. It might not seem great, but given I just saw it go, decades.
That's a huge accomplishment.
That's like 1% a year. That's pretty dang good.
Yeah, but it didn't go like that. It went like there was a whole decade where there was no change at all. And I can go into like I understand why, but and so either very, very small, like 0.5% reduction, and then to have a whole decade where it just plateaued and there was no reduction at all. So, and then to see what has happened and to be at 19%. And I went up north to a family celebration that was up there. So up north where my sister lives, the percentage of the proportion of Māori living up there is higher. The proportion of smoking is higher. And the party was at a Harley motorbike club out in the, not in the main town centre. You go out down a few gravel roads and there's this motorbike club. And now that group would have had a high smoking prevalence. And the smell of marijuana was wafting around everywhere, but they were all vaping. And I was like, the penetration into subgroups that had high smoking prevalence in New Zealand is there. Many Māori were there. They're all vaping. I mean, they may also still smoke, but they were at a party and out of, consideration of others. Most of them were vaping instead. Or they vape. I don't know.
Well, I mean, for us outside of New Zealand, we perceived that New Zealand was quite anti-vaping until, well, in my opinion, I can draw a line of when it seemed that there was a change was when Aaron went down with 1 billion lives.
Right there.
Yeah.
Right there.
Like, for us, like, we were doing story after story after story that New Zealand was, a dead zone for vaping at that point. And then, like, the movie went in, and this was right before we were introduced to you even. And then between Aaron bringing the movie in and your efforts being amplified or whatever, it really I would draw the line that's where, the confluence of you and Aaron in New Zealand, your work and Aaron and Aaron bringing the film really seemed to change opinions about vaping, because it was then shortly thereafter that it wasn't prohibited anymore. It wasn't banned. It was, and we were like, okay, there's actually, we can actually affect change.
And that was, my first global forum GFN I went to was 2015. So that was around, just before that as well. And I came back and I went to see the Ministry of Health, and I went, I was all over the media, just, really, I was chair of End Smoking NZ, and previously we'd been promoting snus and getting nowhere. And so we picked up promoting vaping as a, way forward, risk-reduced alternative. And so, was all over the media, running workshops. And thank you, Bruni, just reminded me that Dave Dawn came out. So at the GFN, I said, please come to New Zealand and help us. And Dave and Jill said, what do you need? And they came down and we ran a workshop. I invited, anyone can come, and people from tobacco control, some of them came. And that's when Rebecca started a Vape to Quit program for Māori women. And there was also another program that started, which was Vape It Forward, where, people overseas were asked to send vape kits directly to people as a gift. And also AVCA, the Aotearoa New Zealand Vapers consumer organisation, also established around that time. And of course, Nancy has gone on to CAPFRA and to form CAPFRA. So we had the beginning of vapers advocacy groups as well, and me and other, and the End Smoking NZ group. You just got to get out there. It was almost before the anti-vaping group. In some ways, I guess they galvanized in response to our advocacy efforts at that time, and they haven't stopped. Of course, eventually with the cancellation tactics that began to be increasingly used across many realms in culture, with celebrities getting cancelled for something, and that whole cancellation of me as well was important to them as a key voice, and the discrediting of people who vape, people who smoke, and defaming people and saying, well, they're all in the pockets of big tobacco. So all of the strategies that they've used to get rid of people to shut down that voice. So I really appreciate you guys giving me a voice and giving the people in New Zealand who smoke and who vape a voice. And I'm really looking forward to being able to share the 2-year results from this group of people. We're putting the case stories up as fast as we can, but it's quite a lot of work. And as I said, I'm now kind of buried in analysis and writing. I will be going to global.
I would be really interested for you to publish like a book about the entire process of the voices
that story,
of the 5%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And like the strategies, you mean?
Well, like all of the different projects that you've done with these people and how they've evolved. I mean, from day one until the 2025 date.
Yeah.
How we got to 5%.
You could have a section on previous published stuff, a section on this published stuff, any other further, plus all of the 2-year, 5-year results of all of their stories, like following each one of these people, through the entire process. I mean, it would be a massive undertaking to collect all of that and publish it, but it would be worthwhile, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I really see that, the Voices of the 5% website with the case stories. I think I personally, as my background in smoking cessation, think it's a valuable resource for people who are trying to learn, who are new to smoking cessation support. I mean, certainly when you work with a lot of clients, you start to get the picture. But there are 100 reasons why people smoke, and there's so many determinants and pressures that go into why people smoke, and also the supports and facilitators of quitting and or switching. So at Global Forum on Nicotine this year, if anybody is able to go, and I'm sure it's always available online, but I'm going to be running a workshop on smoking cessation theory, and we'll be using a bit of gamification to help with that educational process. One of the things I've been seeing at international conferences is the continual pushing and pushing of the stages of change theory, which is American psychological theory. It dates back, it's very old now, and it's still what is being taught. It's still the theory of behavior change that's being taught, or how do you motivate people to stop smoking or alcohol. It's sort of spread. And the stages of change theory is, a lot of people would know, in Australia, they came out with a very sort of keep it simple booklet, it was a booklet for doctors. And what was it? Not interested, interested, ready. They broke it down to like every person who smokes is in one of these stages. They're either, if they're not interested, or if they're not interested, just don't even bother with them. That's what it said. Don't even bother with them. And then if they're interested, then you try and raise the contradictions, the cognitive dissonance, make them feel uncomfortable about, but you said you want to travel, or you've got children, but you really care about your kids, so why are you smoking? And then the ready one, well, you go in like, okay, I can prescribe you this, and I would recommend you sign up with Quitline and whatever. So that theory, it still has prominence in the sector. It is still the one that is mainly being taught, and it is completely outdated, and I think a defunct theory. And the newer theory hasn't got currency yet. So I wanted to do a workshop on that for anyone who was interested. I didn't realize last year the workshops were being filmed and streamed online, but I think if they're still doing that, that workshop might be streamed. And if anybody on your audience is going to come to Global Forum on Nicotine, I'd love for people to come to this workshop. It'll be fun. And
it's in Poland. So,
yes, Warsaw.
Yeah, Kevin doesn't fly.
Nope, I ain't flying. I'll take a boat.
And I work in healthcare. I can't get that much time off.
Yeah. Well, you have an audience, so some of them might come. And I'm getting in early before everyone else who's running a workshop starts promoting theirs.
Oh yeah, no, Bruni will ride in your suitcase, but he has to come to New Zealand from Australia. But he'll ride in your suitcase.
I nominate Skip to go. That's who I nominate.
I don't know if Skip would fly to Poland or not.
I don't know.
Hasn't she already been to one?
Well, I don't know that. Did she went to one here though? She didn't go to Europe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I think some of it might be online, and
Oh, I'll definitely take the day off and watch it online. But
yeah, I mean,
if I fly outside of the country, it'll be to my escape hole in the Philippines. So
you got to get your parole officers.
Maybe I can send the game to you, both of you, and we can play online. Like the streaming thing. You play a game, and we can play online, and people can join in, and we can send
host. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. There's ways and means, but I think I could talk to you about my other project, Squirrel, where I use gamification, and it's exactly the same premise, but I made a digital online game to teach the same new theory, change the thinking. Very difficult to change a theory when people have embedded it and they've been taught this is the fact, this is how to think about this, and it's very difficult to shift people once it's that's all they've known. And I still see people I trained in New Zealand, I trained in smoking cessation, saying the same stuff that I taught them. There's been no impact of new science or new knowledge. Yeah.
So we use this word, a lot when it comes to medical stuff. We use the evidence-based practice. So we are designed in our practice, in our field, to absorb new things and evolve with the new as the new things come. But not always. I mean, not everybody. I mean, obviously, there's still people that we have recently added dry needling, which is essentially acupuncture.
Wow. I know about that because of my broken leg.
Yeah.
So, yep, and very, very good healthcare. Just, as I said, never ever experienced anything like that before. The orthopedic doctor was great. And then he said, and then when you come out of the cast, you're going to start physio. So all new experience for me. And
had I known that you needed therapy, I would have flown to New Zealand to be your personal therapist.
Well, I've had a lot of questions, and I must say the internet has been useful at times. And at the clinic where I went to, they also offered acupuncture. So I'm like, anything. I've got to get back to work. I've got to catch up on my work. And it happened right, at our summer, Christmas time. And, I just have to lie there elevating the leg. And, oh, my gosh, I lost, put on a lot of weight because you can't move. And they're like, oh, don't worry about that now. And then you start, wow, what an amazing, not nice experience. But I've certainly learned a lot. And I would never say break a leg to anyone ever again. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. And but a real blow when I have I've got so many papers that I would love to write and results I need to write and get out there. I'm basically working 7 days now to make up for the lost time. Yep.
That happens. But you've been here for 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours, Dr. Glover.
Better get on to some data analysis. Just trying to, as I said, I'm just trying to catch up but what's the point of doing a study if nobody ever hears about it? I also am open, people want to know and understand better, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk with you and everyone that's online. And because
there's
you
almost
guys,
100 people watching on all the different platforms right now. So,
well, and you guys who just keep up the fight and keep sort of community noting the lies, and it's just wonderful that you keep on. I know that it's very, very hard for a lot of people, and some, especially in Australia, some people being very badly affected by the way the government is treating them, the way that the public health sector are treating them. And I'm watching and following you on Twitter and hearting as much as I can. Just hang on in there. We can only hope. One day the truth will out, as Alex Wodak says. New Zealand is a shining beacon of advance. I'm very sorry about what's happening in the UK. They seem to be slipping backwards there with a some prohibitionist bent sort of starting to take over. And even in the US, you have a lot of variety happening, and it's not all bad. And yep, some states, there's a lot of difference, and you've got some wonderful researchers doing fantastic work there. And look, Philippines, Malaysia, Japan is still, the smoking rate's still going down. Russia, Iceland, Ireland, and even in Latin America, there's some advances happening. So,
well, for me, it's extremely exciting to see the Latin American vapors so aggressively excited and willing to. I mean, I see them guys, and they have it so much worse than what we have. They have Bloomberg paying for people to sit in departments of health and have a desk and pretend like they're a member of the government. So, I'm always excited when our brothers and sisters in other countries are fighting and standing up, because I see fatigue here. Lots of guys are just like running out of gas here, but that to see those guys excited gets me excited again, and then keeps us going.
And I think it's really fantastic how many in the vaping community, you probably read more research papers than even academics who are in the sector. And so there's you are educating yourselves, you are staying on top of the research. People who vape online on X are sometimes the first to announce that a new paper is out, and to point out flaws in it. So I see you're a very important group to. Someone's going to tweet something, and you're going to be able to go, here's this paper. How did you ask this group who knew nothing about what denicotinization is and have no experience of it? How is your survey valid? So I think it's very important to share this work with you, and I think you're the first ones I have talked with about it. That's what I mean. You're all over this. Consumers are incredibly important. We just have to keep pushing for the truth and putting the truth out there and countering that misinformation anytime you see it, which you are. And
I'll give you a part of the reason that I'm sure I'll speak for Patrick, whether he likes it or not. We collectively, in my opinion, think if I want to know the truth, good or bad, like Dr. Farsalino's put out a report about, cinnamon hide or whatever it was, and people ripped his butt, but he's telling us the truth. I want the truth, good or bad. I don't care which it is. So those are the reasons I read, and I'm assuming Patrick reads as well, is that we know better. And we want to know the bad just as much as we want to hear the good. And we don't want to be confirmation bias all day either. Of course we are. I'm sure we are. But you have to look at every single thing. Juca, I'm sure you're familiar with. He's on all of it. The rodent is another one. Yeah. Phil. Oh my goodness. So yeah, one person sees it, and somebody smarter than me is going to go, no, that's wrong, or no, that's right. And I love that part of our community. So
well, I just think that as somebody who's using this product, I want to know what it is that I'm putting in, and I want to confirm and verify that what I'm putting in is better for me than smoking a cigarette. Because the day I find out that this is as bad as smoking a cigarette, I'm going to go back to smoking a cigarette.
Oh.
Until then, I'm happy with what I have, because I know that it's safer for me. It's better it's not 100% safe, but it is way better for me than lighting up a cigarette. I've been vaping since 2010. So I've been vaping for 14 years.
Yeah.
And I still walk past people with a cigarette, and there's a little itch in the back of my head that says, I could bum one of those off of him.
Mm-hmm.
Even now.
Yeah.
So, we should, every one of us, anybody that uses this product should put a few minutes into it to do some research to find out what it is that they're doing to themselves. In my opinion, for me, that's my motivation.
Yeah. You're not usual though. You're unique. No, even some of the participants, it's really amazing that they even took part in this study. I think it's Bled, he's like, I asked about vaping. He's like, why would I? I'm happy smoking. He doesn't care what they're saying in the media. He is happy the way his life is. And some people are. They're not interested in research. They're not interested in any of that. So there's a big iceberg. You guys are at the top of it. And there are many people that will never get involved in advocacy. They've got lots of other things going on in their life, or they can't, or they don't have the capacity or the money or the time. That's the way it is. So good on all of you for what you do, and all the different groups that have formed, and don't, I mean, there's many very nasty people in the prohibitionist group, dirty fighters, nasty.
We had a recent encounter with one. Dr. Colin Mendelsohn came and did a show 2 weeks ago with us.
Mm-hmm.
And, because we were announcing his unretirement again. And the very next day, Simon Chimpman decided to tweet nastiness at us for absolutely no reason. It's not like I said anything. Oh, I did say something bad about him during the show. Never mind. I did insult him during the show.
Sad.
But yeah, I mean, we had Senator Holly Hughes on the show several years ago. And the very next day, there was a story about her appearing on some Yank podcast called Son of Liberty Radio, espousing far right wing
went global
philosophies. And I was like, I don't remember saying anything far right wing in there at all.
I think it's the L word.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the other thing, just to, keep you guys going, is to remember that this is not just about vaping, this attack on vaping. This is a much wider culture war that's going on. And, it's politics, it's money, it's a clash of ideologies, it's a takeover. It's a form of like a Cold War in a way. And vaping is just one of the battlefields they're using in that. So, and there's so many of them going on at the same time, of these, clashes over all these different topics. The strategies are the same often. And so what happened in New Zealand, many of our research participants stopped watching television and listening to radio mainstream media, especially with the lockdown and
the thing
that happened. And we had some protests here, and the people that went down to Parliament and absolutely treated shockingly, and they turned the fire hoses on them, drenched them, and blasted them with music. Just what happened in New Zealand was shocking for many of us, how the politicians behaved, and the media, who, anyway, that's another topic. But we have TV1, not like you guys. We have TV1, we have TV3. So we've got two mainstream channels. One of them have just gone broke, and they're all losing. They're going to shut down the news program. And it's like, for all of the people who were hurt by them, who've been cancelled by them, it's like, bye. And
wow.
It's really interesting to watch them sort of crying. Losing my job. You're gonna,
right.
This is terrible for media, and it's like they appear to have no insight into how widely they have hurt people, how many people in New Zealand are just going, bye. This is, we haven't even been engaging or watching them, because nothing they say is, you can't trust it. Like
truthful,
the anti-vaping documentaries and exposés they've done, the attacking of people like me and others, and making fun of us and all of that. It's like, nah, if that's mainstream media, well, you can go broke, go home.
It's like Elon said when he was interviewed, and they said, "Well,
use quotes.
What do you think? What do you think about these companies that say they're not going to advertise on X if you don't start, silencing the people that have, opinions that they don't agree with?" And he's like, "Well, go F themselves, I think people are finally deciding that they've had enough of this nonsense. There used to be a time I can remember it, when two people that had differing opinions could sit down and have a conversation, and there could be discourse, and it didn't turn into people crying because their feelings got hurt, or hate speech. You're hate speeching me, or words or violence. You could actually have a conversation, and it just could be two people having a conversation. And we need to get back to that, because there was a time when we could actually affect positive change by sitting around and just talking.
Yep.
Well, what we have to do is connect, which is what we're doing here. Just stay connected and just keep, we've got to form our own communities, stay connected, keep talking, and obviously don't stoop to their very dirty, abusive, bullying, lying tactics.
Kevin.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you everyone for thank you for having me on the program, and everyone for sticking with us for this long.
Anytime that you are ready to publish again, I don't care what it is.
I'm ready. I've got
if you publish a paper on how lockdowns affected young people during the lockdown. Oh shit.
If you publish a paper as to why I don't
we
like
will talk
Patrick.
about it, because we actually have a channel on Rumble. We're actually live right now on YouTube, Facebook, X, Twitch, and Rumble.
Wow.
And Rumble does not throttle us. Rumble doesn't silence us. Rumble is a completely free speech platform. So we can actually go over there and say things that might get us, in trouble over here. So we still have that.
I can't say things that might get me in trouble. I have to be a good girl.
we will mask your appearance and change your voice.
That's right.
All right, the shadow, the speaking. I do talk very openly with you guys, and struggle to. I keep thinking it's this, and many scientists are doing it now. There's been papers written about it. This sort of self-censoring. We have to be so careful. Like we're going to get cancelled. Oh, we're going to get cancelled. Like Marewa was. Like, be careful what you say. And it's. I have a few more papers on the publishing merry-go-round, and they go round and around, and. Scientific publishing, especially if it wasn't about the C word, really slowed down. Everything became about that, and anything else, like, it just got shoved to the side. And I don't know if people realize that the editing work, certainly as tobacco section editor of a harm reduction journal, I do all of that voluntarily. I've got to find time on the side for that. And many editors, it's voluntary work, and we're not just sitting here at the computer and somebody submits a paper and we can drop everything and process it through. So it does take time to get papers published, and I have a few more in the works, shall we say, and I will definitely love to come and talk to you about those when they come out.
Great. Because we
great,
like
great to see you too, Bruni. Michael, love your your tweets and everything. I've lost my mouse now, so I can't move up the list, but great to see all you guys, and I think I follow all of you, and you keep me posted with what's happening.
Yeah. That's the best part about our air quote community, is that if I miss something, Kevin catches it. If Kevin doesn't catch something, Bruni catches it, or Juka, or Phil, or Steve, or all the people that are out here. And they also they have different points of view. They can read the same thing as me and find something that I missed. So it's great that we have all these people. There's just in the YouTube, there's 51 people in YouTube watching right now. There's 40 something people watching on X. There's another 15 or 20 watching on Rumble.
Hi, Simon.
All of these people are part of our group, and they make this worth doing. I mean, I don't get paid $1 to do this. I lose money doing this, but I still do it because I enjoy it. Plus, I get to be cranky and cantankerous on the internet, so that's always good.
Right. That's right.
And, you know, it's the only time Kevin can find somebody grumpier than him. So.
I think, you know, you're still going, and you know, there have been other shows and they've come and gone, and I think it's important for us to have communities and stay connected, you know, and I can see the people around the world you have there. And
I mean, we've got Michelle in Louisiana and Mallory. I don't know where Mallory's at, but she's here in the States, and Steve and Jason and Omicidal's in Australia, and Addie is here. I mean, Toasty, but we've got people in Jeffrey Zamora's here. He's in Costa Rica. You know, we've got people all over the world. You know, Victoria, I think she's probably near you in New Zealand. So, you know, CB's here, Michael, there's just people all over. So these are people that would never have any opportunity of meeting in real life. Of actually,
you know, going to a conference in Poland, for instance, you know.
Right. Or actually sitting down and dialoguing. And here we are every Friday night, the same people or some new faces here and there. We're always here to talk, to debate if we have to have a meeting of the minds, to strategize, to celebrate each other's victories on X. You know, we really focus on because that's where the vast majority of this works now is on X, formerly Twitter. So this is how we get the word out. And the link for the paper is in the show notes on all the platforms. Obviously, we want you to tweet the paper out. You can tweet the show out all you want, but tweet the paper out too, because people need to read it. And also, you know, having those extra appendixes and those extra downloadable things is great, because I'm going to start tweeting some of those comments out.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what I do with my survey. Yeah.
And it's about, you know, what I'm arguing for is a robust, fair, and just policy process, and evidence-based. You must have evidence. Can't be making policies when you have no idea what's going to happen. It was astounding to me that New Zealand did that on a number of things.
Well, I just think that politicians want to pass stuff they don't understand, let alone passing legislation without consultation with the public and explaining to them what it actually is that they're doing. And that's universal. That happens here. That happens in Australia. That happens in New Zealand. That happens in Europe. But politicians vote on bills that they don't actually know what the bill says.
I see that, you know, Rorg asked about the level of, you know, how's the stigma of me, the cancellation going. I'm still cancelled. I did put in, you know, I'm a citizen of the country as well. I can, if I want to present to the select committee, I can do that as a New Zealand citizen. And I did try, and then I went online to present. Could they allow Zoom? And nothing happened. Nobody was there. I emailed and I'm like, what happened? I've come on, nobody's there. They're like, oh, well, there are a couple before you who didn't show up, so the committee went to lunch. So I never got to actually present. And this is why so many people feel like it's not a fair and just process. Citizens have a right to have a say. And when you have this type of attitude, as I saw some of those small retailers, family businesses, and the way they were being treated by MPs was horrific. It was just uncalled for. And that's where we're at the moment. I believe I have to keep believing Alex Wodak, who's lived through this kind of a process before in the drug prohibition area, that will come through in the end. The epidemiology, the research on the numbers of death, and I think I saw somebody tweeting this morning about lung cancer rates are coming down. Do you think that has anything to do with smoking coming down? And, why isn't that being talked about? Instead, it's all nicotine causes cancer and all of these lies that are being put out there. So I will love you and leave you. And thank you so much for having me on your show and for, this chance to catch up with everybody. I have found that on X, it's not working the same anymore. So I have to actually sometimes go looking for you guys.
Yep.
And there's a lot of ads. So luckily I created my lists. I hope that you all know how to make lists. And I have my Vape for THR fam list, which anyone can subscribe to. I think that's, there's about 3,500 people on that list. So if you do go on X, you can't just rely on that feed now.
No.
Right.
And so
I pay for X, so it hasn't really changed a lot for me because I give them like $8 a month or whatever. But
okay, so that's how to do it, right?
Yeah. Plus, okay. I can fix my typos now.
Which, I can see that would be important if you're trying to,
No, he's never wrong.
I'm a little obsessive compulsive, and if I hit the wrong button and after I read it, I'm like, oh crap! Now I can go and edit it, fix my typo.
I would really like to have a conversation sometime with you guys about posts and what's an effective post, especially for countering the misinformation. And I sometimes think, like, stop boosting certain people. Like, just ignore them. I know that's a conversation that we will have on.
Now, there's a fellow on Twitter that I have repeatedly told everybody, do not feed the troll, do not play with him, and people still do. Not even block, just ignore. Just to hear.
I had to mute that. And that guy was really slimy,
Well, he's from the Simon school of sarcasm and belittling. Simon thought
as a woman, I found there was something really creepy,
he could
slimy about him, and and I think other females, in the vaping community, I think also sort of. I saw someone tweet, I'm like, I know how you feel. It's like, so, okay, say goodbye. Let's say goodbye.
Bye, Marewa. We love you. We'll see you again whenever you're ready.
Yep. And
whenever you're ready.
I am basically buried in writing and trying to, So when you've got like 5 papers submitted and then something comes back revised and and you're trying to write a new one. So I'll be at GFN. I hope that I get another paper through soon. When I do, I'll be in contact. And please, thank you, anybody who can help raise awareness of this paper for me. That would be great.
We're going to share it everywhere. Kevin, get to sharing.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
All right.
So shall I go and say goodbye to everyone? Great to see you again too, Bruni.
Bye-bye.
And see you again soon.
Yes,
ma'am.
I'm just going to push leave. I don't want to leave, but
You don't have to, but if you want to, you can leave. Because we're gonna talk about UFOs and FISA warrants next.
Oh, good no!
Oh,
No,
wow.
my goodness.
Sounds interesting. All right, then.
The FISA warrants things. Is
Thank
very
you for
scary.
what you do, Dr. Glover. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for what you do too, and we'll stay in touch. Have a great night. Okay.
Night.
Bye.
Bye. Dr. Glover is a superhero to us.
Just because tenacity. Oh my goodness.
And she also speaks to us and doesn't,
with us. Yeah.
We have an amazing array of really smart people that are willing to come and talk to two chuckleheads. I mean,
yeah. Yes, Michael. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
I am at her feet.
Yep.
Dr. Mendelsohn was just here. She's been here. Charlie would come if I called Charlie or texted Charlie. He would be here. Now he doesn't like Kevin and I, but he still would come. But
wow.
we've had an array of amazing people, on this show over the years, and we haven't had a guest in a while, and then suddenly we had two guests in like 2 weeks or so, which is great. Maybe we can reach out to some other guys again and have them back on, but some of them Kevin wasn't here for.
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna take a break. We're gonna get off of all these other networks, and we're gonna go over to the Rumble. We have two little topics to talk about, and then after we're done with that, we will say goodnight to everybody. But for now, we're gonna go over to Rumble. So let me pick some video to play. I already refreshed my drink when Kevin started jibber jabbering a while ago, so I don't even have to get up and go anywhere. But he's probably got to go poop and get new coffee. So
coffee.
I'll pick a 2-minute video here so Kevin has time to go. All right. We love you. We'll see you over in the Rumbles in 2 minutes and 35 seconds.
Science is back, and I choose science over fiction. And so if the science is demonstrating it's doing great damage, then I don't care what it does to a small business person who's selling this stuff. If it is damaging lungs, if it's causing the kind of damage that is said, and that study's not been fully done yet, if it turns out that it is, then I would eliminate it. I would make it, I would go after it in a hard way. I would make it broader, not just for he is.
If we get asked a specific question by a teen, either a direct message to us or via social media about the relative harms of vaping versus cigarettes, we try to be as clear as possible that if your comparator is a cigarette, vaping is less harmful.
In England, the Royal College of Physicians has apparently done a great deal of research on e-cigarettes, and they have actually found that compared to smoking cigarettes, the rate of damage from e-cigarettes is 5% of what it is from smoking traditional cigarettes. You're reducing the damage by 95%. Hey, I don't think vaping or e-cigarettes are good for you. But if you have to choose between smoking and vaping, I happen to feel that vaping is safer. I don't think vaping is good for you, but it's better than smoking.
We're going to choose science over fiction.
And FDA has not used that terminology to use the most recent estimates of youth use. I will say that I'm an epidemiologist by training, so I'm fully cognizant of the definition of an epidemic, which is unprecedented increases over what you'd expect at baseline. That said, I think and know that the science has shown a decline in the number of youth users, and that's a good thing.
The FDA today calling it a dangerous epidemic.
The FDA calls teen vaping an epidemic.
Epidemic? I don't care if you think I'm Satan reincarnated.
Vaping is not as harmful as smoking. Kids are kids, and there's many, many, many reasons why they choose to do different types of things.
What a stupid son of a bitch.